We are all set.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Damian Meyer, chairperson for the commission this year. Agenda item 1 is to call the meeting to order. It's 9:30 a.m. on February 24th of 2022. I'd like to ask audience members to please keep their microphones on mute, please. And with that, we will take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
Amy Chan.
Mark Kimball. Gillen Payton.
All right, Commissioner Titla is here today.
Steve Titla.
All right, good morning, Commissioner Titla. Good to see you.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
So we have all 5 commissioners present. Next, we'll go to agenda item number 2, which is possible action on the minutes for our January 27, 2022 meeting. Is there any discussion of those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. I have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Commissioner Kimball, I second.
Thank you. We have a first and second. All in favor of approving the minutes for the January 27, 2022 motion. I will do a roll vote here. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
and Commissioner Titla.
Aye.
All right, and I vote aye as well. Motion carries 5-0. Moving along here, agenda item number 3 is discussion and possible action on executive director's report. Tom, please share the good news.
Tom, you are still muted.
Didn't want to become a meme. But apparently that was unavoidable. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members, thanks for all for being here.
Tom, can you up your volume just a little bit? I don't know if anyone else is having trouble hearing him, but
I don't know. I think we're gonna.
It may be the microphone on your headphone, Tom, if you want to just hold it closer to your, if you're using headphones.
All right. Is this different?
much better.
Okay. Great. Thank you, members, Mr. Chairman. Being 45 is rough. I just want to let you all know, in case you don't, but I'm sure you do, there's voting ongoing in local elections right now, and the election day is March 8th. You can see from the report that Gina and Avery and Alec and have been working hard to continue to do outreach with a variety of different folks around the state. Notably, I think Gina's worked with the AARP on voter education videos. Avery's met with the Mojave County voter registration supervisor, and we've also met with Yuma County. So we are, and then Gina and Avery both continue to be involved on an ongoing basis with the Intertribal Council and efforts to ensure we're communicating to voters throughout the state. So that is an ongoing, and we're excited about that. Real quickly on the legal front, you may recall from last month, the Court of Appeals had ruled in our favor 2-1 on the case called Legacy Foundation Action Fund versus Clean Elections. The Legacy Foundation Action Fund filed its petition for review to the state Supreme Court on Friday, and our response is due next month. I think that those are sort of the highlights. We did get approval on the rule amendment we did in December with the Governor's Regulatory Review Council, adjusting the definition of family member. So that is in effect now. Unless there's any questions from the commission, that concludes the report. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chan.
I just wanted to mention that I understand Avery was awarded an honor from the Arizona Commission of African American Affairs. And I just wanted to recognize him for that. I mean, we can all see, what an incredible team member he's been since he joined us. Feels like, I don't know if he's the newest team member. It still feels like he's so new, and yet he does so much to, help the voters of our state. And I'm just really impressed with his work. And I was really excited for him to see that he had won this award. So I just wanted to recognize that in case the rest of the commissioners weren't aware. And I don't know if Avery wants to tell us a little bit about that or not, but I don't want to put him on the spot.
Sure, yeah. Chairman, members, thank you. Chairman Amy. Yeah, it was a award for public service. I do a lot of things with the African American Legislative Council, volunteer my time, and I'm always trying to give them like voter education updates and things like that. And I always, I'm reliable, so they recognize it. So it was really cool to be recognized, and I do enjoy working with them. So thank you.
Congratulations, Avery. We really appreciate it. And I was actually going to ask, this is kind of a question for both Gina and Avery. Can you kind of tell us what type of reception do you get at many of these events you attend, as far as, your voter education? What are you hearing from the voters about elections, concerns, compliments? And could you give us a couple of minutes of what you're hearing out there?
Sure, Chairman. Really what I hear is a lot of voters just want basic information. They want to know where to go vote. They want to know if they, how do I register? They want to know like the basic rules and policies that go with voting. That's the typical engagement that I get. And so that's why I think it's important for me to be out there in the public and in the community to talk them through some of these questions, because a lot of times they may not know like who to ask for these reasons. Do
you find that people know who are aware of the Citizens Clean Election Commission, or people are hearing about it for the first time oftentimes when you speak to them?
It depends, Chairman. It depends. A lot of times it's new. If I'm working with an organization, typically they have heard of this. If I'm talking to just your average person, voter on the street, maybe they may not have heard of this. But again, that's why it's important for me to engage, and I kind of give them the rundown of what we do.
Gina, anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I think Avery captured that really kind of the same thoughts that I had. I will just add that I think in regards to, when we're out there, the need that is expressed is the need for voter education. There's often a lot of talks about, whether it's voter suppression or barriers or challenges to voting or election security concerns, whatever those concerns are that a voter typically has in regards to elections, it really ultimately ends up with them saying we need more voter education on this. So my takeaway from practically 99% of all the interactions that I have is that more education is the solution and the need that voters are asking for. And then I will say, in regards to being aware about clean elections, I do agree with Avery too. If it's an organization, yes, they know about clean elections. If it's your average voter, it really just depends. But I will say the average voter, I think, is very aware of our tools. So they know the voter education guide, they know the debates, and they know that they're likely, being directed to our website. It's just, and this is one of the things that we do work on in our communications plan, is branding, making that connection to these tools are coming from Clean Elections, a nonpartisan voter education agency for voters. So I would say they're more aware of our tools than they are necessarily of our name.
Thank you. Any of the other commissioners have any questions, comments on the executive director report? Okay. Hearing none, I had a question, Tom, on page 2. There's this Arizona Supreme Court has convened a task force to address ethical issues in governmental representation. Can you tell us a little more about that? I clicked the link and saw the press release, but is there any more you can share with us beyond that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and I apologize if I thought the administrative order was attached to the press release, so I apologize if I didn't include that. But nevertheless, the court convened this task force chaired by Justice Montgomery to look at some of the ethical issues relating to governmental representation. The membership is, in my view, the committee's a lot of folks who you may know, Mary O'Grady, Pat Sallin, people who have real expertise in ethics and government. And then there's an assortment of other attorneys and judges from other institutional roles. I believe it's probably that the goal would be to try to find some way to mitigate some of the issues that have been raised over the course of the last few years respecting the role of the governmental institutions that provide advice to clients, particularly the AG's office and the county attorney's offices. Their role is to provide advice to government agencies, but also they have a civil and in some cases criminal enforcement role. And the ethical rules as they exist now are perhaps not clear enough in the view of some in terms of how those rules apply. Obviously, I think it kind of inevitably is hard to separate this from the fact that we had an ethical charge filed, or I don't know what the right word is, complaint, I think, filed by the Secretary of State and the Board of Regents against the AG's office. So I think that whatever changes the task force recommends as far as clarifying those rules, I think that is the end goal of that.
Okay. All right. Unless any other commissioner has any questions, I will go ahead and move to item number 4. Anyone else have any issues, questions? Okay. Item number 4 on the agenda is discussion and possible action on the 2021 annual report. I know the report was circulated with our meeting packet. Any commissioners have any questions or comments on the draft? I know I shared a few thoughts with Paula and Tom and Gina this morning, but I'll open the floor for their commissioners. All right. Okay, unless there's any other discussion, which I hear none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2021 annual report.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the 2021 annual report.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
Commissioner Kimball, I second.
Okay, we have a first and a motion and a second to approve the 2021 annual report. I guess real quick, I should stop. I did ask for just a couple really non-substantive changes to be made to this. I think Avery's name was misspelled in here, and maybe to just be a little more formal in a couple spots. Is there any objection with that from the other commissioners? I guess I want to make a clear record here.
I have no objection.
So I guess, can we approve it in substance then, or how do we do that, Tom, or anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, I think that your motion is fine.
I'm being too formal here. Okay, we have a first and second. All right, we'll call the roll. And then again, for the record, this is on the motion to approve the 2021 annual report that was circulated with our meeting packet. We're going to start with Commissioner Chan. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball?
Aye.
Commissioner Titla? Was that an aye, Commissioner Titla?
And Commissioner Titla, you are muted. If you are wanting to speak, you can just come off mute.
Well, I will vote aye while we're waiting for him. So that's 4-0. Commissioner Titla, if you can hear us, you're on mute. All right, well, just in the interest of everyone's time, I'm going to move to agenda item 4. When he comes back on, we'll get his vote on that motion then. Either way, it's going to carry, but we'll clean the record up then. So agenda item 5, discussion and possible action on legislative bills on the topics of election, voting, administration, and campaign finance. Following up on our discussion from last month, staff has invited Lisa Mara, I hope I pronounced that right, Lisa Mara, the Cochise County Election Director and the President of the Election Officials of Arizona, to discuss some of the pending election administration bills in the legislature and how they may affect voters. Tom's going to give us some brief context, and then commissioners, we're hoping to have an open discussion on some of these issues. So I will first welcome Ms. Mara. Thank you so much for joining us. And then Tom, I'll turn it over to you to lead this discussion. But thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, and thank you, Lisa, for being here. I wanted to do 2 quick things by way of introduction. First, I want to introduce Lisa Mara, who has been the elections director in Cochise County for, I want to say, for several years. She has worked in a variety of county and city offices. She was a grant writer at the city of Bisbee, then moved to the county, then was responsible for community relations and legislative affairs and government relations for Cochise County before starting as the elections director. And in her capacity as elections director, she's been one of the most, I think, effective advocates for election officials in their role as nonpartisan administrators of election processes, and as well as with her background in community relations and public relations, having an eye towards the kinds of voter education activities that I think we all think are very important. So we certainly sprung this on Lisa as an invitation, but we were thrilled that she was willing to come and talk to us a little bit about. So the timing of this is based on the fact that this week, as we're speaking, the legislature is in the process of third reading bills from the House to the Senate and the Senate to the House. The timing here is that we believe, and I think frankly are hopeful, that a lot of the election bills that have been thrown out there will not advance much farther than this. There's a moment of truth for these bills on the floor of the House and Senate, and so that's our hope. What we talked about last month was how the commission can better engage on these issues, And in talking to Lisa, and I'll turn it over to her in a second, and then obviously I know that she would like, and I know that we also are hoping to have a more discussion than presentation. But Lisa sort of looked at the different themes of the bills that are out there, what the counties are seeing, because in most ways the rubber meets the road for election administration at the county election departments and the county recorder offices. So we're very happy that Lisa was willing to come talk with us on such short notice, but we think the timing was ideal. And so really thank you, Lisa, for being here. I don't know if Lisa, if you want to start or if you want me to ask you a kickoff question. I really don't. I guess I should have asked you that earlier. But,
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Collins. Thank you very much for the invitation. Can everybody hear me okay? We had some problems with that in the beginning. Okay, great. Technology, gotta love it. So first of all, I really want to say thanks to all of you for the good work you do and the amazing staff you have, the messaging that you put out, the website. That is the go-to for us, and it is so helpful. Vendors love it. They can find out exactly which jurisdictions are having elections. And so I know Avery and Gina had that up every election cycle, and I'm so grateful for that. So it is timely right now with legislation, and I will say that the election officials work with ACO, the Arizona Counties Association, and they also work with the recorders, because as you all know, most voters don't know, it's two entirely different things. So election directors are appointed by a board of supervisors, because supervisors in legislation have some specific duties. Recorders are elected, and they also have specific duties. So I'm very much a fan of having them separate, because that works in this county. Some counties, I think Yuma right now may be the only one where it's sort of combined, where elections is under the recorders. But I think that separation of powers is really important here in our county and for voters, because as Director Collins said, it's not partisan for us. We have the easiest job in the world, believe it or not, because it's about law. And it doesn't matter about party for us. It's really about the voters. And if you're an eligible voter and you want to vote, that we connect you to vote in the way that's convenient and works for you, and that the elections are run cleanly and safely and fairly. So it's a very easy job these last few years. So I will say, and I get laughed at now for saying this, but I have always said that Arizona is a leader when it comes to election law. And honestly, other states wish they were Arizona. And I'm going to explode with laughter lately, but it is true. We have really good sound laws. We have really good processes in place. We've had 30 years, 3 decades of successful vote by mail. So we had a lot of good things. The procedures manual is an amazing tool for election officials. That's put out by the Secretary of State, but it's really for us, because we run elections. So it's a very helpful tool. So I'll start out with just some basic themes, and they're the themes that we've had the last 2 years, 3 years. We actually started this battle in 2019 with misinformation and disinformation, which has been so harmful, and it continues today. And it honestly does nothing except undermine voter confidence. And that is so problematic to this great state. So some of the things we're looking at, the same that we've looked at the last few years, is to eliminate early voting, which I don't know why you do that. We've done it successfully, and we're a leader in the state for doing that. To eliminate vote centers. Vote centers, as you know, used to be more precinct-based, so you were assigned to a place you had to vote on election day. Voters really prefer vote centers where you can vote anywhere in the county. And we're a very large geographical spread out county here, 6,200 square miles. So it is very common for a voter to live in one area and drive 30 to 40 minutes, and they'll go through 3 or 4 jurisdictions. So if they get the choice on where to vote on election day. We also see the increase in early voting every year. So our in-person goes down every year because people are choosing to vote early by mail or in person. We are right about 80% of our voters in Cochise County choose to vote early by mail. Statewide, last I checked, it was about 89%. So let's remember my original comment about it's about the voters and what works for them. So some other themes we're seeing are to eliminate drop boxes, which voters love drop boxes. Sometimes they don't want to use the mail service. Maybe they don't trust their postal worker. Most of them want to save the county postage. And it does in the thousands. And drop boxes are safe and secure. So that's another issue that we're fighting. We've really gone back with technology because, as all you know, technology is we're head and shoulders above what it used to be. But this push to go back to counting ballots by hand is just not, it's mind-boggling really, because there's no way humans can count 20 to 30 to 50 races on a ballot accurately and in the time that we look at. And then I think one of the biggest things that they also want to eliminate machines in general, right? So I don't know how that works because we don't have machines, we don't have cell phones, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now without that technology. One of the biggest things that concerns election officials right now is a push to tie the ballot to the voter. And that is problematic for many, many reasons. First, this little thing we call the Constitution that I'm very fond of. It's also a privacy thing. And I cannot tell you the phone calls that we get as election officials. And every election, there's some new thing that we get calls about. And in 2020, I can't tell you the dozens and dozens of calls we got from men and women. And the question was, are you sure my spouse won't find out how I voted? And that was, the first couple of times we were like, that's a unique question. And I'm sure my husband and I have probably ruled out each other over the years voting. But that was disturbing that people thought that you could find out how people voted. Now, it's no secret if you did vote, right? And we'll talk about that as we get into a bill. But how you vote is your business. It's private, it's confidential, and that's really important to keep that. So working with ACO, the Arizona Association of Counties, we sponsor a bill pretty much every year. And we like to say with Califax, it's the most boring bill. So this year it's Senate Bill 1460, and it's an omnibus cleanup bill. It's old language, it's things that are out of date, we find in statutes, and it's a very boring bill. But it's so important, and we're so grateful to Senator Soap for sponsoring it for us again. So we obviously are supporting that. I wanted to start out with a few things we are supporting or that we're neutral on, which is neutral is really important. Before I started saying all the things we're opposed to. We're not opposed to everything. I get a lot of pushback lately that we're opposed to audits and we're opposed to security, and that is absolutely not true. We are so fond of audits. That's why we do hundreds of them along the process from the beginning of the election till way past the end of the election, because we like audits. So another one that we're supporting is Senate Bill 1477. That's sponsored by Senator Townsend. And that's where the clerk of the court can give the Secretary of State monthly felony reports. So it helps reporters clean up voter rolls, because voter rolls is really important. And then House Bill 2378, sponsored by Representative Follett, is that the Secretary of State can't settle suits that materially impact us without consulting with us first. Again, that's really important as we look at some of these settlements that are made on a state level. We're neutral right now on two bills, both sponsored by Senator Mesnard, Senate Bill 1259 and Senate Bill 1411. Basically, they have to deal with recounts, changes in the number for hand counts, and ballot tracking system for all counties. Now, we know we have the state site where voters can go in and check their status, check if their ballots been received back, that kind of thing. Expanding on that would be great, because we know when ballots are mailed to people. We know when we get them back. And when they come back, they go through the recorder's process, signatures are verified, and then they come to elections, to early boards to start processing them and count them. So we got a lot of calls again last year from people they said, the president told me to call and find out exactly when you counted my ballot. So we give the date that the recorder's office got it, because that's the date. If they accept it, then it's counted. I don't know the exact date and time I counted your ballot. I don't know the exact time I counted my ballot, and I've been voting early by mail for almost those 30 years, safely and securely. But again, one of those audits we talked about is we know how many ballots are mailed, how many they get back, exactly how many we tabulate, and they match 100%. I'll tell you, banks write off millions of dollars every year because it's easier for them. And they don't want people questioning that, because then you would think your money's not safe at a bank, and it is. But we balance out to every single ballot because of those audit points, because that's one of the great things about Arizona. So I'll move into some of the bills that I'm just going to say are problematic, and we'll go in themes. So I broke them into election security. Part of the thing with bills is, all you know, because sort of preaching the choir, you're experts in this. Mirror bills, right? One in the House, one in the Senate, pretty much exactly the same thing. And now we're in the happy cycle of strikers and amendments. So a striker could come up that has nothing to do with the bill. So that makes it a little confusing as far as tracking some of these numbers, but I'll do the best I can. And then obviously, you know how to get a hold of me if I can ever be of service any other way. So the one that I'm focused on most is Senate Bill 1120, and that has to do with the ballot paper countermeasures that I'm sure you've all heard about. And that's where it has a holographic foil seal and all these things that supposedly make it secure. And you know, when we talked about those themes originally, eliminating drop boxes, eliminating early voting, eliminating vote centers, there is absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Martin. Is everyone hearing her okay? It's a little bit of a strain. Can everyone hear okay?
Well, the volume is fine, but I'm having trouble hearing every word. It just sounds like the audio is filtered through several feet of cotton or something.
A little muffled. Is there maybe talk a little slower, or I was following along and then I started losing a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm getting the gist of it, but I can't say I've understood every word. And it is, as long as you stopped us here for a minute, Mr. Chairman. Lisa, are you amenable to, after you mention some of these bills, letting us weigh in and question you about them before you get to the end?
Absolutely, Commissioner, absolutely.
Okay. I don't know what to say about sound. I'm getting it, but I don't know that I'm getting every word.
Okay. Well, let's try again here, and hopefully it'll improve. And maybe if you could talk just a tick slower would be helpful, Ms. Mara. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try that. And volume's up. I apologize, Mr. Commissioner and Chairman. It's that technology down here. So I will try to speak a little slower, maybe a little louder. And yes, we'll stop after each bill. So after we go through some of the things in the ballot countermeasure bill, which is Senate Bill 1120. Well, some of the biggest issues wanting to put this in place so quickly is that it's not tested on the tabulators. We don't know if they're going to be able to read it. While it's true, tabulators read the timing marks, we don't know what a metal seal is going to do with that. You've probably heard discussion about there's only one paper supplier right now. They normally do currency. Currency, as we know, is one size. A dollar bill is the same size as a $50 bill, a $100 bill. Ballots are all different sizes. This bill requires every ballot be 22 inches. 90% of the counties here can't count a 22-inch ballot. The equipment only counts a 21-inch ballot, and many small jurisdictional elections only require a 10-inch ballot. So why we would go through that extra paper Doesn't make any sense. So while we're not opposed to security, not opposed to a watermark uniformly printed on the ballot, having all these things in the paper is problematic. There are 17 points in this bill that says we have to verify. We don't know how to verify if some of these things were really input into the paper. There's a black light provision, so that's doable. But let's remember, election equipment has to be certified by the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, and the state. So anything we do that may require something different means election equipment has to go back. So that one is problematic for several reasons. One of them is because it is a bill that ties the ballot to the voter. They want a unique number that only the voter knows so they can track that ballot. And that's the start of the tying it to the voter. So that's basically the gist of that bill. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Chairman, Lisa,
Go ahead, Ms. Chin.
I just, I like to ask the question that I used to hear former Senator Tom Smith ask, which is, what is the problem that is trying to be solved with? I mean, I think you explained the ones that you support and the ACO supports. Well, I'm just curious about, because to me, and this is without being involved with your organization, so I may be coming at it from the wrong point of view, but to me, that 1120, the ballot paper countermeasures with all the, put together by the currency printers, is a response to a non-existent problem, one that is just a conspiracy that's a lie, in my opinion. Well, I think it's been proven to be a lie. And I was just curious whether you have additional information or whether it is a solution that has no problem. Does that make sense? Is that where that bill's coming from? If you're comfortable.
Commissioner, it is a good question, and no, there really isn't any proof to support any of this. We're still hearing the claims that thousands of ballots, Korean ballots, bamboo ballots were put in, and that's absolutely false. While there might be different weights of paper, that isn't necessarily an issue, because you're going to have that ballot on demand printers that you use on election day. We are all electronic machine voting in Cochise County on election day. So you use an express vote machine that has a thermal skinny ballot card. So lots of different paper, but there's absolutely no proof that thousands of ballots were printed and mailed in. And let's go back to, even if somebody did print one and send it in, only one ballot can be counted per voter. You can't accept any more, and those have to tie in with the audit number. So it is just not a problem that that needs to be fixed. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Chairman?
Mr. Titla, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier, I couldn't vote because I heard you, but I somehow I was muted. I tried to unmute myself, so I vote aye in that prior vote.
All right.
At any rate,
thank you for
yeah,
that up.
regarding
so the record, that's a 5-0 vote to approve the 2021 annual report. I think Commissioner Titla, you were gonna make some further comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the report by the young lady here, I think it's a good report. And I have confidence in the state election system. And I think that a lot of these bills are based upon conspiracy type theories that really have no basis in fact. And I think that what they do is they suppress the voters in the state. A lot of them are limiting the ability of people in the state to vote. We should be opening up the process so that more citizens can vote. And I think that that may be relevant to the findings and fact of the Clean Elections Act. because in 16940A, it talks about the findings and declarations of the Clean Elections Act. And it talks about that the intent of this act is to create a clean election system. And then it says that it's done to encourage citizens' participation in the political process and will promote freedom of speech under the US and Arizona constitutions. So my question, maybe not to the young lady, but to the Clean Election Commission or to our council is, do we have any recourse against these seemingly unconstitutional bills based upon our findings and declarations in the Clean Elections Act? That's my question. Thank you.
Tom, you're muted, but do you want to go ahead and respond to that?
Well, sure. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Titla, yeah, I think that the answer to your question is that the commission has express authority to make recommendations to the legislature, which not all agencies actually have, although all agencies do in fact lobby. So we actually have that authority. And it so the commission is clearly empowered by statute to ensure that that the act is administered properly, that voters are able to obtain information, that voters are able to participate in the election process. I would just make a quick note to everyone just to understand this, that the Clean Elections Act provides for voter interaction with candidates and the election system at every moment of the election cycle, from the qualifying period where candidates are out soliciting $5 contributions, to the debates and voter education guide that we provide candidates and voters an opportunity to interact, to and I know it's a secondary issue in this context, but to the campaign finance reports that allow folks to voters to have information on who's advocating for their vote on a time-sensitive basis throughout the election cycle. So the commission's role in elections is statutory, mandatory, explicit, and so for those reasons, I think that the commission is certainly entitled to make its views known on these kinds of matters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's turn this back over. Well, I know Ms. Mara had asked if there were any questions about the bill she was just discussing. If there are any more questions on that, fire away. Otherwise, we'll let Ms. Mara get back to her reporting. Any other questions of the commissioners? Okay, thank you, Ms. Mara. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So the next bill we'll touch on is House Bill 2239, and that bill prohibits electronic adjudication. And we talked originally about technology, and we should use the technology that we use. It's important. It saves time, it saves money, it's efficient, effective, safe, and secure. So right now, most counties have systems that can do electronic adjudication. Where that comes into play is most often in voter intent. If we get UOCAVA ballots, from overseas, out of state, those have to be duplicated because the machines will not read the fax paper or whatever paper they're on. They won't. So that has to be duplicated by a board of 2 people of opposite party. There's a whole system in place outlined in statute and the procedures manual. So if there's a voter intent issue where voters make a mistake, happens all the time, they're supposed to get a new ballot, but many times they don't. And they'll draw a line through it, they'll exit out, they'll make their choice very clear. And so these are things that can be adjudicated automatically while the ballots are being tabulated. Huge time saver because you don't have to stop and duplicate. If one race on a ballot with 30 things on it has to be duplicated, the whole ballot is duplicated, not just that one race, because it has to be an identical match. So this is a huge benefit to counties, especially when you look at Maricopa with millions of voters. I have about 85,000 registered voters. They have several million. So that's really important. And you know, eliminating that is just going to cause more hands on the ballot. Why would we want more duplication where we have more of a chance for human error? And it destroys the chain of custody. We didn't talk about that in the very beginning, but that's one of the biggest audit checkpoints we have is the chain of custody. And so the more people that are touching those ballots, hands on ballots, that destroys those chains of custody. So again, we've got to use the technology we have. I just wanted to get that bill on your radar. And if anybody has questions on that process, I'm happy to answer.
I don't see any questions. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So continuing the election security, there are two bills. There's House Bill 2780, House Bill 2023, and those have to deal with posting the ballot images online and the cast vote record online and making them searchable. So again, ballots are protected. Ballot images are protected just like paper ballots. They aren't subject to public records requests. A couple years ago, when the legislators put this law into effect that they had to be treated the same as paper ballots and protected, that was almost unanimously accepted. And now we want to put them online. I don't have an issue with that. People are like, well, what is it trying to hide? I don't have an issue with that, but I have an issue with voter security. In this time of all the cyber crimes we have, the hacking we have, people sign their ballots. People write on them. That's something we should probably start doing more education on. Do not sign your ballot. If you make a mistake, do not initial that mistake. I told you the phone calls we had last year. I had many ballots with things written on them. They explain their vote. I can't in good conscience vote for any of these people, and here's why, and they signed it. Please don't sign your ballot. So that posting those ballot images online, making them searchable, that's sort of a vendor thing. I don't know how that would work out. But those ballot images are never going to match what your voter registration numbers are because of secure voters, right? Secure voters are not listed in the totals for the voter registration. They're never going to match. So again, people being able to change the ballot images, it's just problematic because it's not going to solve anything. It's not going to appease anybody who thinks that there's corruption. It's just not going to make a difference. Let me tie in another one and then we'll ask for questions since they're closely related. So Senate Bill 1572 has to deal with posting the voter registration list before the election and after the election online. I think that's very dangerous. It's no secret who's registered to vote. Your party is no secret. All those things are available. The parties automatically get them every quarter from the recorder's office. There are things in statute on what they can and can't do with that information. Your birthday, that's protected. But if you voted in an election or didn't vote, that's public record. So if we post these lists online prior to the election, again, we have no idea where that info is going. We have no idea who's getting that information. If it's sent to a party or it's a public records request and they purchase the voter list like many candidates do, then we at least know who has access. So we posted online to say all these people are registered. After the election, they want it posted online who voted and who didn't vote. With all the canvassing and door-to-door stuff that we had in the past, that's very dangerous. To just open that up to have people know who did or didn't vote. So that's those are some real things that have security issues that concern me, and I would be happy to answer any questions about any of those.
Hello, this is Commissioner Payton. Hello.
Go ahead, Commissioner Payton.
Hi. I guess maybe I have a question, or it's kind of a statement, I guess, but is there a way that your organization of the counties could do like a press conference or something about these concerns? Because we all hear, a lot of this is hysteria about all these bills coming out. And your common sense way of explaining these, and you're a professional as well as these other recorders, I think it would alleviate a lot of, speculation about what's going on in the elections. And I mean, really, I think most of these, the governor's not going to sign most of these things. But the average person, if they heard something like you're talking about, they would, it would ease their worries. I think a lot of these spring out of the delay, though, of when we have our elections and we don't know who wins for weeks and weeks. That's where that birthed a lot of this, I believe, in the past 2, 3, 4 elections. And also, if you could speak to that, how we could make it to where we wouldn't have such a long lag. And I suspect a lot of that is because of the early ballots that are brought in the day of the election. So that was kind of meandering, but anyway.
So, Ms. Meyer, do you want to tackle that? You have unpack that if you can, and give us your.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that. We do work really hard to ensure safety, and I could not do this job if I didn't believe it was safe and secure. It's not the short hours I work here, because I work 60 hours a week when it's non-election, not the huge pay, and certainly not the adoration of the public, because they don't trust any of us anymore, and that's really unfortunate. So we see a lot of that. They trust their county, but it's every other place. So I'm grateful that I have that integrity in our county, and we do speak a lot about that on more on an individual basis. We speak through ACO a lot of times, because keep in mind, I have a department of 2 people, and I do 4 elections every year, whether they're big elections or not. So we're a very tiny department. One of the challenges with election officials, election directors like myself, we're not elected, right? We're appointed, we're at-will employees. So while I'm more vocal than most about some of these things, it puts some people on the spot having to be very vocal. Reporters, on the other hand, are elected, and so they certainly can speak whatever they think or feel at the time. So we do make more of a united effort, but again, we work pretty much through ACO and work with legislators on this. And I should have said this in the beginning, because many of the sponsors are actually working with Jen Marson and Megan and Ryan at ACO, and they're understanding some of our concerns. If they had reached out to some of us in the very beginning, that would have been helpful, because we could have headed off some of these things and put them on the right track. Because again, reporters don't do elections and we don't do voter registration. So going to the right person is important. And again, we follow the law. We don't make the law. We don't enforce the law. We're going to follow the law. So we're very vocal on the request to speak system, which is also something I encourage everybody to do. Whether you're a commissioner or just the general public, those things are important, and more people reaching out directly with their legislators. Regarding the one comment about voters and, you know, that they might be upset by some of this stuff, I thought so too, because it's killing me. But there's also a fair percentage of people out there who say, I don't care if anybody knows how I voted. I don't care if you know I voted. And that to me is even more dangerous than this, because is that a really good thing right now for people to know how you voted? So thank you for those suggestions, and we'll keep trying to do some outreach and educate people on some of these bills. But I think you're right. I think a lot of them won't move forward a whole lot. Again, elected people, they're working for their constituents, right? So these are the claims they're hearing, even though there's no proof of these things being issued, they're still getting hammered about that. So do we have any other questions about those couple bills?
I wanted to ask one quick question that kind of dovetails on what Commissioner Payton asked, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Lisa, one of the things that Commissioner Payton mentioned, and I think this is maybe a good time. I know Commissioner Chan has an out here in about 45 minutes, so I wanted to get this question asked now since the time arose. So, on the issue of communicating to the public about the concerns of election officials. First question is obviously for Lisa, but then obviously for the commissioners in general. You know, I think that the issues that Lisa has identified here all go to security, and they go to a kind of if you will, a sand in the machine kind of quality to many of these bills, which will, as a result, I think it's clear, lead to an exacerbation of the issue that Commissioner Payton identified, which is we know that this is a time-intensive process. We know that itself causes confidence issues. All of these proposals taken together, they have an ideological cast to them, obviously. But Lisa, I guess the question is, do you think that?
Tom, we lost you. Right after you said, do you think, and we were all on the edge of our seats, you went silent.
Well, we have no audio from you, Tom.
Oh,
they're back. You're back.
Long story short, Lisa, do you think it would be helpful to have the commission try to help communicate the concerns the election officials have, which are frankly not ideological, but administrative and to the broader public? Because I think these issues, I just wanted to add, I think all of these issues, this grist in the mill issue is going to result in an exacerbation of the time it takes to count and resolve elections, which is a core issue that Commissioner Payton identified.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Collins, yes, I think that would be helpful. And it's interesting that you brought up the early ballots that are dropped off on election day or sent in late, because I do have some bills about that. There's some solutions, I say lightly. And then we've got another bill where they want to eliminate counting early and make us start counting on election day, because it goes back to they don't want early voting for the most part. They want everybody voting on election day. We'll talk a little bit in some of these bills too about tabulation on election day. Most counties are central count. That means they don't count the ballots cast at those voting centers or polling locations. They bring them back and count them. In Cochise County, we have 17 vote centers and we tabulate at each vote center. That works for us. Our board spent $1 million a couple of years ago, 2015 actually now, to put this new system in place, because you may have remembered Cochise had some serious issues in 2012 and 2014. So we've eliminated those gratefully, but we tabulate so we get results pretty quickly. It is those dropped off early. And again, we do, and Clean Elections does a great message with this as well, you know, vote it, sign it, return it. And that's important because that's why it's an early ballot. That's the whole point. We also, in the past couple of years, have had a big issue with people, and because they were told this on a national level, request an early ballot, but then go vote in person too. So if they requested that early ballot and voted it, that got counted, and they went to vote in person, they had to vote a provisional. So we saw so many more provisional ballots because of that misinformation. So should voters return that ballot? Absolutely they should, and that's why drop boxes are important, because many voters choose to do that instead of mailing them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully it hits some of the highlights, and as we go into some of these other bills, you'll see that it's problematic. You know, we used to have 7 days to count before the election. Then it went to 10, which was so great because the more people are voting early, you need that time to count. And then now, last year it went to, there's no time, you can start counting and tabulating as soon as they're processed and received, which is wonderful because we should have, and we do, have almost all the early ballots that we have received counted on election night. So those results are released first, and those pretty much take care of all that. So it's the late earlies that we have to count afterwards.
Tom?
Commissioner Payne,
Tom?
you have another
Yes.
question? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe we could send like a video crew to different election officials, and they can speak maybe to a couple of things each to give real information about what they see at their county, and we could put it on our website and maybe give it to the the public broadcasting system or something like that, so that we can get real information from these professionals, and maybe you would alleviate the some of the hysteria that we see.
Okay. All right. If I can just speak up, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, Commissioner Payton, but let's be honest here. No one in 2016 when Trump won was complaining about our election security. Okay. A lot of this stuff about security is frankly nonsense, and our leaders know it. Okay. So a lot of this hysteria has been knowingly created. So I guess my question is, Ms. Mara, do you believe in 2020 were there security issues with our election in 2020?
Chairman, Commissioners, no. In Arizona and across the country, it was the safest election we've ever had.
So I agree with the Commissioner Payton that, it would be great for the commission to, do some of these PR things that you're suggesting. That's wonderful. But until our leaders who are spreading this disinformation stop and acknowledge that our elections are safe and secure, and this security business is nonsense, okay, then we're going to keep having the hysteria, and no amount of PR or videos or press conferences that we do will change that. And this goes back to what Commissioner Titler was saying about a lot of this is fueled by conspiracy theories that we know are purely conspiracy theories. So we will continue to educate, and we will continue to do what we're doing. But until our leaders act like leaders and stop the misinformation, disinformation, we're going to keep fighting that. So that's all I'll say about that.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Kimball.
Okay, I just, I think that was very well said, Mr. Chairman. And while I'm all for issuing statements and holding press conferences, I don't know who we're talking to. I don't think it does any good to talk to the legislators. I think the ones who are proposing this have minds that cannot be changed. If we talk to the general public, we may win some converts, but they're not the ones passing these bills. So I think it's a very frustrating system, and I'm all for doing everything we can to try to address some of the misinformation. But I think there's been a lot done in the past year and a half, and we haven't gotten very far. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Chan.
I want to, give credit to Commissioner Payton for saying what he said, because I do think that he's seeing it from the viewpoint of a lot of the voters. And I sometimes I feel like we do such an incredible program, it almost feels like our resources aren't in question. I worry about our bandwidth as far as our programs. I agree with everything, Mr. Chairman, that you said. I agree with what Commissioner Kimball said. My personal feeling is that this is a cynical ploy to get voters to vote for the liars. That there's always been a bit of a seed here, even when I was working in elections in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. And then I left in 2013, the Secretary of State's office, that there would be people claiming different things about what they'd seen. And we always asked for follow-up and who can we talk to? And there was like one case where we were able to talk to somebody about it, and it amounted to nothing. I think what I would like to say is a couple things. Commissioner Payton has more confidence in the governor as being a backstop to crap than I do. And I respect him for that, frankly, because I maybe I need to adjust my worldview. I worry that a lot of these could get out of the legislature and cause, kind of chaos and overwhelm our election offices. Having to not do electronic adjudication or not having machines involved at all, I think is one of the proposals I heard. I don't know if Lisa touched on that specific one, because I think it's different from just no electronic adjudication. It would be basically hand counting ballots. If any of those were to get out of the legislature, it would grind our elections to a halt. And so I think, I guess my point, sorry, let me bring it back to where I was originally going to start and didn't start there. Maricopa County elections and recorder have conducted a masterclass in doing just what Commissioner Payton suggested, which is videos, tweet streams, or tweet threads about the reality of what they're facing. And they've also debunked every single point of the fraudit. I call it the fraudit. And I think that I don't know how successful they've been in converting anybody who is a follower of the leaders, who I don't view as real leaders because I don't think they're telling the truth about elections, but I don't know how successful Maricopa County has been. It's like we're all in our little silos and our tunnels. And I like to think I'm on the side of reality, and I don't understand those who believe in these conspiracy lies. But as I said, I think Maricopa County has conducted a masterclass. We could probably take what they've done and put it up on our website for a start. And if other counties wanted to add to it, they could. But again, I just don't know how successful it will be with our current climate. So having said that, I'm sorry, that was a little bit long. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Tom, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I just wanted to, and I hope you can hear me. I apologize for my technology issues.
No, we can hear you loud and clear.
I want to, I know we need to get back. I want to make sure we get as much time with Lisa as we can. I want to say to bring all five of your discussion points together. My own view is that there is an untapped reservoir of people out there who do not have the kind of information they need to have. And there are people who are not engaged, frankly, through social media and some of the other places where this discussion is happening, both in terms of the conspiracy stuff and some of the rebuttal. And what I think the audience for that more broadly is, in fact, folks who are not engaged in this at all, but who are alienated by being associated with the conspiracy theorists and therefore are instinctively going to recoil from correction. I think that's a real issue for election officials and folks who work in voter education going forward. I think that the way to go about addressing that is to communicate better. And we can implement this on a small scale. I'm working on something along these lines. How to communicate to voters who are not involved in this stuff on a day-to-day basis, how the practical concerns that Lisa has identified will make things work less well. To take this out of the realm of who has what views on what things and into the realm of where these administrative tasks exacerbate or create issues that don't exist. I think that's a practical thing. I think it should be done in a forum that is distinct from the, quite frankly, what I think is the negative echo chamber of Twitter. I think that Twitter is a terrible place to do voter education generally. And I think that it drives way too much of the discussion in the state of Arizona about these issues. That's my honest opinion, because it is alienating to those who are not in that particular mode of communicating. So the goal here, I think, should be to try to find ways to communicate the county association and the county election director viewpoint on the practicalities of this to a broader audience that is not engaged in conspiracy thinking or frankly anything else relating to this, but to understand the practical impacts of this kind of legislation if it were to pass. Because, to Commissioner Chan's point and Commissioner Payton's point, it is in fact a discussion that currently is only being had for purposes of decision making by people, but it's essentially comes down to, and this is just a fact, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the Governor. Those are the people who are in a position to make the decisions about how these bills proceed. So how do you develop tactics that make sure the public is aware of the implications of those decisions in a way that creates an environment, which is what we try to do as staff for you all, quite frankly, is try to create an environment where you all can make the best, most informed decision possible. That, I think, is a role that we can help assist with.
Thank you, Tom. And I know that's, we've had that conversation, and that it's an excellent point, and it's also sort of it's a challenge to bring those practical issues you're talking about into the forefront with everything else that's flowing around that's out there. But you're 100%. I agree with you 100% on that. So I think, Ms. Mara, I think we can go back to you. I think we had diverged off the path there, but I think you have a list of bills. I'm not sure how far you are, but could we turn this back over to you?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and I don't mind at all. I'm grateful that no one required me to do a PowerPoint and sit here for 2 hours talking. So the whole goal when Tom and Gina reached out was to have conversation and dialogue. So this is wonderful. And it is challenging with messaging because people that are on social media, you can't reach them. Lots of people don't read newspapers because they don't want to pay for subscriptions anymore. In a rural county, we don't have a news station, so we get news from Tucson. very confusing for people. So I'll touch on a few more things. Observers, political parties, that's a huge thing in a lot of different bills right now. One of them, I'll just pick one because there are many. HB 2289. They want more observers, political party observers. They want them closer to us. There were some challenges last year, you know, 2020 with COVID, and having them, you know, right in. We were all concerned about COVID. So some issues with that, but they want them closer to us. They want them more engaged in every process. We can't test the machine. We can't program the machine. We can't remove a thumb drive from the machine, which is how we test and program, without them being present. Many times we do that work, you know, we'll start it at 3:30 in the afternoon because we have a free hour. I mean, these aren't things that can be planned out in smaller places. We get by with what we can get by with a small staff. They want them closer to be able to see, to make sure we're doing the right thing. How do they know the right thing? I find it interesting that political poll workers, not political, but poll workers, have to be trained under statute before every election. So we do. It's a 2 to 4 hour training. Got a handbook. There's absolutely no training for political observers. And that's always bothered me because we get them in our county. And I'm fortunate as a director, I have good relationships with both parties in this county. The Libertarian Party is not recognized in this county, but on a state level, you know, they are. But we have a great working relationship, and that's important. Some counties don't have that, but they need training. Every year I get questions from observers who are like, well, my party chairman is going to make me an observer, but what am I looking for? I personally find that a conflict of interest for me to train them. I give them access to the poll worker handbook so they know the basic rules, 75-foot limit, what's a provisional ballot, ID required. But there should be some training by them and not by the party specifically. I'm an advocate of the Secretary of State, the Attorney General. Maybe it's a clean elections thing, I don't know, but you know, like an hour-long training just so that they know these rules. I don't want to train them again because I think it's a conflict of interest for me. Frankly, I don't have the time, but what if I'm the bad actor and I'm teaching them wrong, right? Because everything I think of now, we look at how we defend it in court. So those are significant things, but lots of stuff about observers, but nothing about training. So that's something we should look at. Any questions on that, or would you like me to move on to the next one? A lot of head shaking.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, all right, thank you.
We had one bill that I believe has failed, but remember we talked about strikers, Senate Bill 1010, and that required school board elections to become partisan elections. Now they're nonpartisan, right? So they just have a November election. I'm not talking about a party issue. That isn't my issue with this. My issue is a money and logistics issue. School board members are not paid. So if you turn it into a partisan election, that would force them into 2 elections, right? They'd have to have a primary in August and the November general election. In our county, we have very few of those elections. They're canceled and appointed because the same number or less than number of candidates apply to all the paperwork and run. So we don't have a lot of those. They have a lot more in Maricopa County, and it's a lot more prestigious to serve on some of those boards, perhaps. One of the other big issues is if a person resigns now as a school board member, the county school superintendent looks for a replacement. They look for a qualified candidate. They do interviews, they have a process, and they fill that seat. If it's a partisan election and a partisan person resigns, then they've got to find a partisan person to replace them. It's incredibly hard now in these areas to find people in these. So that's a problem. And the fact that, you know, people change their registration before they run for office. So I didn't see that really solved anything. Like I said, last time I checked, it had failed. But that cost to schools to do 2 elections is problematic, to say the least. So I'll move on to a couple of things and then wrap up so we can answer more questions. We talked a little bit before about tabulating on site, which my county does, but we spend a lot of money on that equipment. And it also takes a huge amount of space in my warehouse to store it. Takes a long time to test it and program it, and that works for my county, but that might not work for every county. Maricopa and Pima, I think Maricopa tabulates at some vote centers on election day. Pima does not right now. So one of the bills, Senate Bill 1362, forces all counties to tabulate ballots on election day at every location. On face value, that sounds good, right? Because you get results quicker. And to Commissioner Payton's comment, that is an issue. But think about the backside of that. Not only the cost, but there are some security concerns. Where does the Pima County store that kind of equipment? I mean, that's it's just problematic. The time it takes to test the equipment, to program it. I have over 200 pieces of equipment that we have to test and program every time. So it's also a huge cost consideration. A lot of these bills are coming out with appropriations, but most of them don't have a dollar amount in them. So that's great for a one time, but what happens next year and the year after that and the year after that? So, so that was one thing, right? Tabulating on site on election day. And then we had a striker come out on a bill that said we can't start tabulating till it gets to election day. States that do that, that's a nightmare. Because then you've got how many millions of early ballots that can't be, that would delay results so much. I think another big issue we had with people is in 2020, every state was different, right? And we've been doing vote by mail for 30 years here. Some states haven't done that. And so they had to gear up quickly to do that. And that caused all kinds of hardships and problems. But that wasn't the case here. So we talked a lot about paper ballots and hand counts only. There's a lot of bills with that. But again, people, that's just not going to happen. We're not going to be able to count that many races that accurately. We talked about audits. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
So I have just a counting question, and I guess do we count here in Arizona any differently or substantially differently than other states? And because one observation I have is I understand people want results quickly, but you know we're a state where it's close elections, and you have to count all the ballots before you know that. And, you know, there's only a half dozen states in the country that are like that. You know, California or Texas, I mean, you don't have to count all the ballots for you know who wins because it's so, you know, one way or the other. So that's just a reality of Arizona is we have, you know, close elections and you have to count them all before you can declare a winner. Is that reality just something we have to deal with and we just have to wait on the counting? Or do we count differently than other states, and we could improve on that? And I realize that's probably a county by county issue, but can you speak to that at all?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I think you're right. Across the country, it's just different everywhere. It's always surprising to me how many states don't have vote by mail or early voting at all. Anyway. So I think getting those early ballots returned quickly and promptly is a huge factor. But you're right, many of our races are close. So it's hard to say about other counties. There are a couple like mine that do the tabulation on vote centers. But remember, I only have 17 vote centers. Pima County just went to the vote center model, which was huge for them. Huge, such a great benefit to the voters. Because remember, supposed to be about the voters. They may look at doing some tabulation, which would probably speed up some of their result time. But I think we're doing everything we can at this point. Like I said, to start counting on election day, I think Pennsylvania does that. And that just delays it even further. So I don't know if that's helpful, but we've improved a whole lot in the fact that we have so many more early voters than we do election day voters. getting those ballots returned quickly so that we can get them counted. And we still fight the messaging with people. We get those calls every election. People are like, well, I don't vote early because you don't count my vote unless the races are closed. And that's just so not true. We've been fighting that forever because those are the first results that are released. Which I'll use that as a segue if I can, Mr. Chairman. The one bill that wanted the ballots to start being counted on election day. See, if we have dialogue beforehand, we could understand where some of this thinking comes from. Because the thought behind that was, well, if we start tabulating early like we are, then the results could get released, and then they would know how many fake ballots from wherever with Bamboo to put in to win. And I couldn't understand that. That didn't make any sense to me because it's already a felony to release results before 1 hour after the polls close. I don't know any election official in the state or in the country, and I know quite a few that would do that. So that I was like, wow, I couldn't even have an answer for that. But starting to count on election day, it's not the way to go. Any other questions about that? Then I'll wrap up with just a couple more things that I think should be on your radar. Okay.
Any other questions? Sorry. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So there are a couple bills circulating about election holidays. And let's make election day a holiday, and whether it's just in name only, or let's make it a real state holiday and everything's closed. And boy, that sounds great. But there's so many problems with that we don't think about, right? Transportation. On election day holiday, there wouldn't be buses running necessarily because they go on a holiday reduced schedule. A big issue for counties, the people who do elections, if everything's closed, well, I need people. I need the people from facilities to be working. I need the IT people working. I need the fleet people working. So having that holiday, it's not going to increase voting because remember, almost 90% of our state is voting early by mail. So having that sounds good, but a lot of these vote centers are in schools. And so the schools would be closed. You have to have people come in for those. It's just not going to increase voting on election day. What's going to happen, election day is a Tuesday. People are going to take that Saturday, Sunday. They're going to take Monday as a vacation day, so it's a 4-day holiday. It's not going to increase election day voting, but it's going to cause a lot more problems with getting people to the polls. So any questions on that? So I'll wrap up with two things. We have one bill, Senate Bill 1133, that wants to eliminate all mail-only elections. Now we know schools, special districts, cities, towns, they can all hold vote by mail elections, and many do. We have a couple of charter cities here, and they do that as well. So this would eliminate them from being able to do vote by mail elections. That's a problem again too, because a lot of these are small jurisdictions. It's more economical for them. They have higher turnout if everybody just gets a ballot in the mail. So those are a little kind of concerning, because then if you had to have election day only for them, that's going to be more costly because then you have to take equipment, staff. Now we just staff a replacement site or two. It's not a full-blown vote center. So that's a little challenging. And then there's no specific bill number on this one, but I'm going to point this one out as a general hardship. There are so many bills that are tied in now with every mistake is a felony. And most of the things now are misdemeanors, but it's also intent. There's nothing in a lot of these bills about intent. If you intentionally do something, if you release election results before, that absolutely. You know, if you destroy equipment, if you throw ballots away, absolutely those are felonies. But normal mistakes, people are human. We're human. You know, we're working 18-hour days for 2 weeks solid before an election. We have poll workers. You know how hard it is to get poll workers anyway? And now if they make a mistake, they get a felony. I mean, it's insulting to this profession of professional people that administer elections. This is not like it used to be years ago where it was just papers and pencils and you filled in boxes. And you've got to be a computer programmer, an attorney, a psychologist. I mean, there is a lot to this. So it's just insulting, again, for just a mistake being a felony. So those were some of the big issues that I had, and we can talk about anything else you have questions on. I did want to circle back to audits though, because we talked about those a lot, and we do have a hand count audit that's in statute. Unfortunately, it's one of those things tied to parties. If the parties don't want to participate, then it doesn't happen. So half the counties don't have hand counts. Hand count's very important because it's a random number. And I go back to this in the Arizona audit because we already have statutes, right? The hand count happens with a certain percentage. Both parties participate. I love it. It's a wonderful experience for them because it forces them to work together. And it's wonderful. It's educational. There's also provisions in statute if the count is off by a certain percentage, it gets expanded and expanded all the way up to court. So these things are in place. I think we're working with some sponsors because again, we've had some really, we're working really hard with people to try to come to some compromise on these things. But having that audit is critical. One of the bills circulated said if the parties don't want to participate, then the elections director people will have to do the audit. They don't believe us anyway. Why would we do that? That doesn't make any sense. So the parties should participate. We're not opposed to audit. There was a bill about the Auditor General, and she spoke at a hearing recently about some challenges with that department. Yes, these should be professional auditors if you're going to audit. So lots to look forward to. I appreciate you giving me the time to talk today. You all know how to get a hold of me at Cochise County if I can be of service at all. And I thank you so much for all the great work that you really do for voters. And that website, it is a jewel.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for spending better part of a morning with us and giving us your expertise and insight. I know I learned a lot. I really liked your comments about, election day and sort of the election day being a holiday and the unintended consequences and roadblocks, which really tied in with what Tom was saying about, the practical administrative issues that are going to be unintended consequences of some of these bills. So I really appreciate that. Please don't be not that you are a stranger to commission, but please feel free to come back anytime and share more thoughts with us. And I just open up the floor for any other commissioners to chime in on this, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Chan.
I just want to join you in thanking Lisa for spending all this time with us. I do feel like it's been tough for me to keep up with all the election bills this year. And so even though, the staff briefs us and provides this information, it's just kind of nice to have it boiled down and, the information. And I just also want to say, I really appreciate your leadership, Lisa, as an election official in Arizona. I think your voice is a really important one. And, you just keep it real every day with your public statements. And I appreciate that very much. So thank you for your time and your efforts on behalf of election officials everywhere and in Arizona especially.
Mr. Chairman. Are you calling on me, Commissioner Meyer?
Yes, I am. I apologize.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I learned a lot from this, and I had gone through a number of these bills that I had issues with, and you touched on all of them with one exception. And I'm sorry if this comes out of right field, but I'm wondering if you can educate me at all on S1609, which is about invalidated elections. And if this is something that you're not familiar with, we can talk about it later, but it's about if the court determines the initial person declared elected did not in fact receive the highest number of votes, a new election is required. I'm wondering if you know anything, if you can explain this at all.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the kind comments and the question, Commissioner Kimball. I'm not really familiar with that one. I sort of lumped those into the same class where if on a legislative scale, they weren't happy with the outcome, that they could change the election. So this one actually does require to go to court. I think this is probably one of the ones Senator Townsend has been very open to working with us and to working with ACO on issues. So again, I think this is one of those, there's just no proven fraud. And so to go back and try to overturn these is problematic. And I know that doesn't answer your question entirely, but it sort of gets lumped into that if they're not happy with the results.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments for Ms. Mara before she signs off, I guess, or I guess you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting as well. Okay. All right. I believe that takes us to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on equal electronic system for candidate petitions, candidate qualifications for the ballot, and qualifying contributions for participating candidates. Commissioners, you may recall last month, we discussed recent issues with respect to how candidates are qualifying for the ballot and some legal issues that have arisen with equal. Staff has an update, including a hearing that occurred yesterday in the Superior Court. Can you update us on that issue and the litigation between the Secretary of State and the AG's office?
Yes, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, as Commissioner Myers, Chairman Myers said, the Superior Court, Maricopa County held a hearing yesterday, or argument yesterday, on the efforts by the Secretary. The Secretary's lawsuit does 2 things. Just as a recap, it seeks to enjoin the Attorney General from, in a sense or in some way, prosecuting that office if they take the system known as eQual, which is an electronic system that allows folks to sign petitions for candidates and to give $5 qualifying contributions to candidates who are participating in clean elections. That system is scheduled currently to go offline on March 12th, and it will be offline throughout the qualifying period, for the remainder of the signature gathering period, and it's a little unclear if it will be offline for the entirety of the qualifying period for clean elections, which is longer. The suit also seeks to have, because the state is also a party to the lawsuit, the lawsuit also seeks to have the court declare that the Secretary's legal approach to the issues behind eQual are correct. The ruling, when it comes, I mean, the judge yesterday at the end of the hearing said that she would rule as soon as possible. I did walk.
Tom, we lost you.
Like he's also frozen, so he may have an unstable connection. We'll give him another minute or so to hopefully.
The injunction. To have the injunction hearing consolidated with the merits, although there was no evidentiary hearing, and also to have that declaration issued, although in the Attorney General's view, that was not the subject of the hearing. So I suspect I don't know if the court will rule on all those things. I think the secretary's position seemed to be, well, if the AG wants to do discovery, that's part of the issue with them enforcing, which is a little bit of an odd position to be in. We are not currently in a position where we're need for the commission to take any action. I think we just need to be aware of the situation, because there are a number of different issues that have developed out of this, and the legal issues here are, and I think I said this last meeting, but they continue to be confusing to me, because this is not a legal issue. As I said last meeting, I think this Attorney General's sending a letter to the Secretary's office saying they might prosecute them was unfortunate and ill-advised. But the entire legal proceeding here is pretending as if a factual issue doesn't exist that does exist. The voter registration system that the Secretary's office uses does not allow for more than one quote unquote district at a time to be used. Equal is another system that pings off of the voter registration system. Whether or not the voter registration system was equipped to do two maps or not, it's quite clear that the legislature did not know that, and it's not clear if the secretary understood the implications of that or not. So the reason why this will continue to be an issue is that going through the challenge period for signatures, where candidates may seek to have their opponents knocked off the ballot if their signatures weren't qualified, the continued lack of clarity among the various parties around how the safe harbor provision, which was supposed to secure voters' ability to sign for petitions for candidates that are eligible. It's unclear how that has worked, and the hearing yesterday, frankly, makes that less clear to me than it was before. And then finally, the qualifying period. I want to also quickly say we have had conversations with at least 2 county recorders in the last week who do believe that the safe harbor works the way that we believe it does, and our counsel on this issue has suggested they believe the Secretary's guidance says it does, which is good. That's an uncertainty we're trying to limit. But that's kind of my summary. I know that may have started in the middle and not maybe given everybody as much background as they want, but that's where we are today. I believe there will be a ruling on the preliminary injunction, I suspect within a few days. There is some legislative activity still related to how to work out all of these different kinks with respect to how the voter registration system will operate during the challenge period for candidates. And then lastly, we'll continue to try to work with the counties to try to make sure that we have as much clarity as possible around how this works for candidates who are seeking to qualify for clean elections funding. Mr. Chairman, that kind of concludes my update, if anyone has any questions.
I don't think I have any questions. I mean, is it kind of fair to say, Tom, that this is a logistical issue and not really a legal issue?
Mr. Chairman, commissioners, that is definitely how I see it. There is a bit of, I wouldn't say more than a bit, there is a lot of the Secretary's office, the Attorney General's office talking past each other because neither party seems really willing to talk about the real issue, which is how the voter registration system was set up. That just is how it is. The arguments that there's a talking past that logistical problem.
Any other commissioners have questions or comments on this
Mr. Chairman.
issue? Thank you, Commissioner Chan.
I actually don't have any comments, but I just wanted to let everybody know I need to get going. So I'm going to sign off, and I'm sorry I'm missing the public testimony. But I think you all still have a quorum, so I will see you all at the next meeting. I apologize. My kids have a half day today, so I have to go pick them up from school.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Commissioner Kimball, Commissioner Payton, Commissioner Titla, any questions on the equal issue?
Mr. Chairman, one brief question. Tom, so is it still possible that this shutdown could be delayed in a way that would make it more palatable for us?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball, I would say this. We have not told the Secretary's office, I don't think, that we object to the shutdown or don't object to the shutdown per se. The Attorney General's office has suggested, and I don't have reason to believe this is incorrect, although the Secretary's office says it is, that this could simply be delayed out past at least the signature filing period, which begins on April 4th. That doesn't necessarily deal with the qualifying period issue, and that's the one issue. It's very few. There are going to be very few legislative candidates. There are going to be even fewer legislative candidates who are going to have a set of signatures that are in this. Essentially, if you take the safe harbor provision at its face value, you would have to have, say we had District 1 and old District 1, new District 2. You would have to have been in old District 1 and not in new District 2 to be in the niche that would be problematic. We believe, based on talking to at least one county recorder I spoke to last week, suggests that that's possible to solve on paper. So again, the scope of the issue is a little. So the short answer is the Secretary says that it cannot be delayed. The Attorney General says it can be. Our communications with the county recorder on our specific issues indicate that candidates should be able to work around the issue so far.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we will go to the next agenda item, which is public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date or responding to criticism. Does any member of the public wish to make comments at this time? You may also send comments to the commission by mail or email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. And now for our monitor, is there anyone in the public who would like to make a comment? And candidly, I don't know if anyone wants to make a comment. Is someone monitoring this, Tom, that would tell us that?
We would have seen I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think we would have seen someone raise their hand, or Kathy would otherwise notify us. So I think we're in good shape to move on.
All right. So at this point, I guess we can rest assured no public comments today. That will move us, I guess, to adjournment. And before we do adjourn, I just like to say that thoughts and our hearts out there to the folks in Ukraine and what they're going through, and just keep them in our thoughts. But other than that, I will entertain any motion to adjourn the meeting, or any other comment from any other commissioners. Go ahead.
Chairman, I motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Commissioner Kimball, second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Or excuse me, I gotta do the roll call here.
Aye.
Commissioner Payton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball?
Aye.
Commissioner Titla?
Aye.
Okay, I will vote aye. And for the record, Commissioner Chan is not here, but the motion carries 4-0 to adjourn. Thank you all, and we will see you next week. We are adjourned.
Okay. See you next time.